Today is the regular meeting for Thursday, February 20th, 2025 at 5:30 here in Columbus Elementary School. Once a year, we try to at least get down here and do one of these meetings. And so typically I think we do them in January, but this one went a little over, so that's why we're here. So thank you. Welcome, everybody. Mr. Cole, can you call roll, please?
Mrs. Conley?
Present.
Mrs. Cameron?
Present.
Mr. Roscoe?
Present.
Mr. Crowe present.
And Mrs. Paez is online?
On Zoom,
On
yes.
Zoom?
Is she online or?
Yes.
Ms. Paez, will you announce your attendance? Go ahead, Ms. Paez.
Yes.
All right, on to Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mexico is a symbol of friendship among cultures.
All right. Any changes to the agenda?
Mr. President, there are no changes to the agenda.
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Conley?
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Crowe? Yes.
Yes.
And Ms. Paez. Don't forget Ms. Paez is online.
Oh, Mrs. Paez.
Yes. Oh.
And public comment, we do have one, Mr. Johnson.
I need to go up anywhere.
You can stand there, you're welcome to come up here, whatever is comfortable for you.
This first school board meeting I've been to, so it's more so of a question, more so than a comment, but I noticed on the agenda, there's a consideration for approval of a quote for office furniture of $339,000 and some change. So I'm just kind of curious, that seems like a pretty large sum of money. So like, what is that going towards and the necessity of it? So I'm looking at that as like, I could go build a pretty nice building for that amount of money, much less buy furniture, so.
Yes, sir. I think who's presenting that one.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm going to defer that question over to Mr. Parker, our Deputy Superintendent of Operations.
If we could choose to answer that now, Board President or members of the board, but it is also an action item, so how would you like me to answer that now or during the action item?
Would you bear with us just till we get to that action item, then we can discuss it then? Would that be okay? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, that was only one.
Yes.
Okay. On to reports. Any, Demi?
Where is Ms. Parker? There we go.
I thought that was you. Okay, thank you. And then Columbus Elementary has the report.
They are in the back.
So tonight, my assistant principal will not be joining me. She's over there. She's a little sick today and she's losing her voice, so I need her here tomorrow. Yes, also part of it. Yes. So again, welcome to Columbus Elementary. So at Columbus Elementary, all our students and we all follow this motto of show respect, make good decisions, and solve problems. So every morning, during the Pledge of Allegiance, that's what we pledge to every morning. So respect, make good decisions, and solve problems. So that's what guides our behavior. That's what guides what we do here at Columbus Elementary. So our current enrollment is 478 students enrolled currently. We do have a pre-K program and a 3-year-old program in our school. we have 2 ESS teachers. So kinder, we have 4 teachers, first grade, 4 teachers, second grade, 4 teachers. Third grade is our biggest cohort. We have 5 teachers. And then from there, it goes down to 3 teachers in 4th grade and 3 teachers in 5th grade. And of course, we do have our dual language program, which is a 50-50 model. And we have our all English strand as well. Okay, so let's just real quick talk about board goal number 1, which is to foster academic excellence and achievement. So of course, everything we do here at Columbus Elementary is guided by our 90-day plan. And every student receives 90 minutes of uninterrupted language arts block. And then they also receive a 60-minute of uninterrupted math block as well. So we do have our specials, but we work around those time limits that we have. So weekly, we meet with all grade levels for PLC. So we do have a conference room, that's where we meet. The teachers already know that if the TLC is on Monday or on a Tuesday, they come to us, and that's where we meet. We also use our language, arts, and math content specialists to also attend in our PLCs. They help us with some backwards planning depending on the data that we see. So during our PLC, we analyze student data. We also look at individual student PDSAs, and those are based on where the students are at in their academic performance. And like I also said, we do some backwards planning as well. Okay, so let's talk about financial management and district operations. So every year we get our operational budget, and of course, everything we do is guided by our 90-day plan. So the way we plan for our budget is based on the needs of our 90-day plan. So everything we do is guided by that plan in the fall and also in the spring. So we use our funds to ensure that our teachers have access and our students to one-on-one laptops. So every student at Columbus Elementary has a laptop. And of course, technology works with us, so we can make sure that they're up to date and we do all those things. So, and then of course, just general, teacher and student supplies, we have, a room full of supplies. The teachers have a system, where they can ask for supplies. So, that's how we do that funding. And goal number 3, of course, enhancing health, safety, and wellness. So first of all, having a nurse is great for the school. I mean, for every school, not just for us. So the nurse deals with, daily student wellness. Anything happens on the playground, they come a little sick from home. So, our nurse, these are all of our students. We also have our annual flu vaccine that supports all of our students. We have some dental screening. We have some vision screenings. So of course, that all enhances, the health, safety, and wellness. We also have our physical education program, which is very important. Our students go to PE twice a week. So, they get a lot of activity going on. And, it also sets the stage for a healthy and active lifestyle, not just now, but throughout their life. Another big thing that we have going on is having a counselor. for our social emotional support for our students. So our counselor does see every classroom on a rotation basis. He also has time in his schedule, to see small groups of students who need support. Also someone one-on-one, it just depends on the situations. We use our counselor a lot when we see, arising behavior issues. So, you know, our counselor was great at it. And our last goal, enhancing family and community involvement. Well, as you know, Columbus is a small community, so, you know, we try our best to partner, for example, with our fire department for Red Ribbon Week, and throughout the year, they come and do several presentations. So we are like the heart of the community, and when something happens at Columbus Elementary, like everybody attends usually. So we do have our fall festival, in October. We have literacy night in the spring, and we also have math and science night. This year, we're collaborating with the American Red Cross, to support some student outreach programs, and just to teach them, also about like fire safety, having the fire alarms at school. So, we just started working with them, and, we also work closely with the library. This year we have an author coming in to our school, Miguel Briones. And so, it's a group called Friends of the Library from the Columbus Village Library. So they're the ones who are bringing them this author. So hopefully it'll be a good thing for our kids. Okay, and here is just some of our iStation data. So some of our data by grade level. And maybe it's hard to see, but here are some of the colors. We have kinder, first and second grade, and this is back in August. And now in January, these are our scores. So for kinder, beginning of year, we had 28% proficiency, and we grew to 34% proficiency. In first grade, we began at 59. We did drop. Guys. Okay, so first grade, middle of the year in January, we did drop. And so we also have those conversations in our PLCs, like why are our students scoring lower? And that's where our student PBSAs come into place. And that's when our teachers sit down with students individually to support them in their specific needs. So first grade, we're working on that. Second grade, we started at 23% proficiency, and we moved them up to 50% proficiency. So we're hoping to meet our goals for the end of the school year in May. And this is iStation setting. This is our English data. Our English data doesn't look so good, but you know, we still wanted you to see it, be transparent. This is our all English students and our all English graduates. So we also have to take into consideration that these students come to us in kinder, and their home language is Spanish. So they get immersed into English. So hopefully by the end of the year, we can grow these students in English. First grade, and with this one, we're just talking about one class. one class in kinder, one class in first grade, and one class in second grade. So by the time they get to first grade, they do receive 50% of the instruction in English. No, I'm sorry, yeah, this is all English, so it's 100% in English. But we also have to remember that this is the only place that our students usually hear English. They go to a Spanish speaking community, and most of their parents speak Spanish at home. So our first grade, we started at 28% proficiency, and we did go down by 2 points. In second grade, we grew. So in second grade, would be their third year of all English, so we're starting to show a little bit more progress. And these are our third grade data. This is third grade. So our third, fourth, and fifth grade data, our students are not doing very well. They need to grow. They need to grow, and we understand that. So during our PLCs, we are working on ensuring that those PBSAs are in place, that the teachers are meeting with those students 3 to 4 times a week with that small group instruction. And our 90-day plan for this semester is based off of our third, fourth, and fifth grade data. So we do realize that that's where our teachers need the most support, and our students do as well. So our 90-day plan is targeted to those grade levels, third, fourth. Where I just mentioned that our spring 90-day plan is based on that. So we're working on layer 1 instruction, which is instruction for all in language arts and math. So Ms. Mireles and I are committed to going into classroom every day, and we are providing feedback to our teachers on a bi-weekly basis. So first we do math, and then we provide them with some quick something that they can go back to the classroom and change, something that they can change that will make a difference for the students in the way that we can help them grow. So that's what we're working on this semester. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. On to our consent agenda. Yes, need a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented under A, B, C, D, item number 7. Thank you.
I second it.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Colbert.
All right. On to action items. First one up, consideration of out-of-state travel for students from Bataan Elementary to attend Sonora Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona. Mrs. Baca, Mrs. Cox.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of our board. I'm Mrs. Bockham, the principal of the Bataan Elementary. I have 2 of our 5th grade team members that can give more information on this out-of-state travel. If any questions are.
If you have to have questions.
You guys did this last year, right? How did it go? I know we approved it last year, but we didn't hear back how it went.
And it fits right into everything we're doing with our PBL, our biome.
That's good.
So we
awesome.
appreciate that happening again.
Yes, ma'am.
You have any?
I don't think they have any more questions from the board.
Is this the
Comments?
same place from last year they went to?
Yes.
Say it, yeah. I know you probably said it and I was reading, so.
Yes.
Okay, no, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Sonora Desert Museum. For the Town Elementary School.
Second.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crowley.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.
Yes,
Mrs. Paez.
You can make an announcement before you do B.
Michelle?
Yes. There she is.
Mr. Rook.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Looks like you're going back to Tucson. Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the board and the audience, I would just like to announce that Ms. Chavez is on Zoom. So if she speaks, she'll come out of that tower in the middle of the table. She was in Albuquerque today presenting at the NAMASBO, which is for school business officials. We also have Ms. Paez, who is sick. So she's doing it from home. And then Joe Adcock, our CFO, is also at NAMASBO, so you'll hear his voice out of that tower. We just wanted to be transparent since we are on YouTube and you all can't see my screen. So
Go ahead. All right. On to action item B, 8B, consideration of out-of-state travel for students from early college high school, February 28th, to participate in AVID junior college field trip at the University of Arizona in Tucson. Mr. Simpson.
Mr. President, members of the school board, first I want to say thank you to Columbus for the hospitality. It's fantastic. And we want to, I also want to ask Dr. Bailey to speak about our AVID field trip. She works with our AVID elective and she will tell you about our field trip to Tucson.
Awesome.
As we presented at the community input meeting about our systematic plan of living university so that our students can dream big dreams. We've taken the juniors, they've already gone to Western New Mexico, NMSU, UNM, and now we'd like to take them to U of A in Tucson. We did take a group of juniors, now seniors this year, to U of A last year. And although we didn't have any students attend U of A, I think it gave them an opportunity to see a really incredible school and to experience the college environment. They even taught them the song, the like Bears song that they have. So it was really neat opportunity.
Make her sing the song.
Can you sing the song for us? You can brush up this year. We'll revisit it next year. Any questions from the board?
students are going,
A busload.
a bus.
We did put pressure.
Is it small or the big bus?
A big bus.
Okay.
Because we want to make sure that all of them go, but of course, some of them will say they have other obligations, so.
Right.
We want to fill our bus.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, comments? No, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the out-of-state travel for students from early college high school, February the 28th, to participate in an AVID junior college field trip at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona.
Mr. Crowe.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe, I'm sorry. I was literally.
Mrs. Crumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.
Yes,
I got
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
All right. On to item C, consideration of acceptance of a grant awarded to DHS Robotics by White Sands NASA in the amount of $14,300.
Mr. President, members of the board, I will be presenting this for Mr. David Wirtz, who is our first robotics sponsor. They do have practice tonight and we do want them to have all the time that they can to prepare. So I'll be carrying this for him. The $14,300 is what's given to them annually. You have approved it in the past. It's from NASA White Sands. They use it for their travel costs, robotic parts and equipment, and any type of expenses that are in addition for their competitions. It's pretty much their operating money for the year. I stand for any questions.
Question by the board? No, entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve acceptance of the grant awarded to DHS Robotics by White Sands NASA in the amount of $14,300.
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.
Yes,
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right, on to item D, consideration of early release from MOU of school resource officer from Luna County due to extenuating circumstances. Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker.
It's a good evening, board president, members of the board. I did, on this one specifically receive a request from Sheriff Evie, I believe is here today to speak a little bit, due to extenuating circumstances, specifically to a reduction in staff, law enforcement staff serving Luna County. So I'm not going to speak for him, but he'll explain a little bit about that extenuating circumstance and how he's asking for some consideration on severing that temporarily, I believe.
Yes.
Sheriff Evie.
Good evening, everybody. The Luna County Sheriff's Office regretfully requests for you to terminate the school resource officer contract with the Deming Public Schools due to extreme shortage of manpower on patrol. I have recently been advised we will be losing 2 deputies to Doñana County Sheriff's Department and another deputy in March. Therefore, the Luna County school resource officer cannot be dedicated by the contract due to the extreme shortages. In an emergency situation, Luna County Sheriff's Department school resource officer would be immediately reassigned to patrol without having to revisit the existing school resource contract, which has a 60-day review period. Outside of the contract, I will assign the former school resource officer to Baton Elementary, Red Mountain Elementary, and Columbus Elementary to maintain a law enforcement presence. This may or may not be permanent depending on the manpower shortage situation. The Sheriff's Office currently has 9 certified deputies with 3 uncertified deputies. The Sheriff's Office Patrol Division is currently 12 deputies short at this time. Due to the extreme shortages, I have assigned my patrol captain 2 investigators and an investigator assigned from another agency to our patrol division. Also, I and the state representative Jennifer Jones met with New Mexico State Police Chief and were able to get the local New Mexico State Police to cover the graveyard shift from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. We have the worst manpower shortage of all the sheriff's offices in New Mexico. Starting pay for an uncertified deputy in Luna County is $17. Starting pay for a certified deputy is $20. And I did talk to the county attorney and they're working on getting better pay for new hires. So hopefully that'll help the situation. Commissioner Harvey, would you like to say something about the pay raise that y'all are working on?
No, I'd just like to make the comment, everybody. First off, thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here and have the opportunity to talk with you. We are fully aware from the commission about the difficulty in attracting people, and we are obviously looking at, we have an obligation to provide that for all of you. That's what I mean, all the residents of the county, and we are working intently on finding resolutions to that. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate the work that you and your deputies do.
Thank you. That's it.
Just a couple questions. I mean, you're talking about pulling out and we kind of reviewed the contract. And the contract, I believe, maybe we need some clarification from our lawyers, but contract says that there's a couple stipulations, if I'm not correct. One is to do with budget constraints, and there was another piece to that as well. But I don't remember reading anything as far as manpower issue. So I want to make sure that we're doing things correctly and not coming out of a contract that we put ourselves in a bind, number one. The other concern is that the schools are a part of the community. And so the concern by pulling officers out, whenever we entered in this agreement, we wanted to have the safety of the kids in mind. And we understand that. And I understand probably a little bit more than most just because of my background. But my question to you is there a way that we can work out some type of hybrid schedule where we can still have officers in the schools, either maybe they finish up a call, they can come back to the school and be there maybe until the next call. Because typically the calls are rotated, and I don't know how many calls you guys get. I have an idea about how many calls you guys get a day, but you know, and that's a rotating list if they haven't changed it. So that officer that may return to the school would be back up on the top of the rotation 4 calls later or 5 calls later. So is that a possibility?
Yes, we've been discussing that too. And we intend on keeping that school resource officer there even after the contract's, you know, gone. And we're just gonna pull her if it really becomes an emergency situation. I mean, I've already got state police covering graveyard shift. And that happened quite some ways back. Jennifer Jones, I got a hold of her and she assisted me in getting hold of the chief of state police. And that's how that came about.
I know that the city was in a position at one point in time that they were talking about a 3rd resource officer, but they're kind of in the same boat. But they were waiting for some officers to come out of the academy to be able to fill some street stuff so they could do that. Would you be opposed if, because Red Mountain and Bataan and Columbus are all in the county, if a city police officer came available to be the SRO, that 3rd SRO, would you be opposed to deputizing them to be able to cover those county
Sure.
schools?
I would have no problem. The safety of the children is paramount to me. You know, I've even talked to the county manager, Bryce, and that's what I said. You know, I don't want to pull the SRO from the school. You know, that's the worst thing in the world to me. You know, but we're in a situation that's terrible. We're the worst in the state for manpower for sheriff's departments, which is terrible. Half of our patrol division's gone, you know.
Yeah.
And we have other people threatening to leave, you know, 3 that I read about a minute ago.
Because of the pay?
The pay, yeah, the pay, we can't compete with Silver City. Silver City PD is picking up some of our people. We had one, I got good news. One of them that went to Silver City PD is coming back. And I had Trini Garcia, y'all know Trini Garcia, he worked down here at the substation. Trini did tell me he's got a young guy that graduated from Doniana's Academy, and he's gonna be applying with us. So that's a great news. He just graduated down there.
I mean, do we need our attorneys to review the contract?
For a later time.
I'd move to table the issue so that the attorney can review the contract first.
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe?
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Once we get some clarification from our attorney, then we can discuss that further. We just want to make sure that we're making the right steps to be able to address that accordingly. On to
E.
B, selection of committee members for the audit committee.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, annually, we select members to serve on the audit and finance committees. Currently on the audit committee, we have Mrs. Cameron and Ms. Paez. And on the finance committee, we have Mr. Orozco and Mr. Kroll. You just have to select who will be serving on those 2 committees, and then we'll let you guys know when those meetings are.
Any volunteers for the audit committee?
I'll do it for one of them.
I can continue to be on the audit committee. That's all right.
Okay. Any volunteers for the finance committee?
I'll do that.
Anybody else?
I guess I'll do which one, the audit or the finance?
The finance? Okay. So we have finance and audit covered.
Just go ahead and do a roll call vote for those 2.
Mr. Crowe?
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
On to item F, Consideration of budget adjustment requests. There's
Mr. Adcock.
Mr. Adcock.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm presenting to you some budget adjustments. As Mr. Turner said earlier, I am at ASBO in Albuquerque getting some additional training that's required for me to continue to be a school business official. The first two budget adjustments that we have are actually increased budget adjustments. The first one is because we had some additional award for carryover. We're increasing the amount in that grant by $57,000. Most of that is going into salaries and benefits that needed some adjustments done because of negative balances. And we're also putting a large amount in professional development for that grant. The second one, again, is an increase. It's for our Perkins. It's an increase of $4,000. And that's going into supplies mainly for the CTE programs at the high school. The next few are going to be transfer bars, which is basically moving from one function to another. And the first one being for our Title I, and that is to increase, to cover the increase of the health benefits. As you guys remember, in January, the health benefits were adjusted to where we were paying, the district was paying 80% of the cost and the employees were paying 20%. So we had to do some adjustments to some of our grants for that. And it's also to put some more money into professional development. The next one is also for Title I. Again, it's mainly to go into the benefits and professional development. Number 13, that is going our 24-154, our teacher and principal training and recruiting. What we're doing there is adjusting to salaries and benefits, again, to cover negative balances that has a rise throughout the year as as movement is made in those salaries. Number 14 is our NM pre-K. It's moving some funds from our instructional to operation and maintenance. It's to cover some supplies and materials that's needed for the NM pre-K classrooms. Number 15, we're just moving a little bit of funds to correct some negative balances as needed. The last one I have is we're moving some funds for the capital outlay. We had some software that we needed to purchase for the access controls. And so we're moving money from the actual building to that software line item so that we could get those access controls up and running. With that, I stand for any questions that you may have.
Questions on the board? I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the budget adjustment request as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Now we can talk about the furniture, Mr. Johnson. On to item G, consideration of acceptance of quote from Beck Total Office Interiors in the amount of $338,869.15 for central office furniture refresh. Mr. Parker.
Mr. President, board members, in front of you is a request to purchase a quote for $338,869.15 for the central office, the Cody office furniture refresh. A little history behind that. couple of years ago, the district started investing in refreshing furniture for our facilities. I don't know if you remember, about 2 years ago, we had the refresh of the Florida branch. We had a lot of furniture in there, 25, 30 years old. Started breaking, was unrepairable. So we began that refresh. A couple of years later, we began that same refresh at the Cody offices. That furniture sitting about 30 years old. It's definitely out of warranty, irreparable. Some cases it's been piecemealed and put together with different things, splintered. Some of the glass coverings have actually fractured and broken and cut people's hands. So we felt that maybe it was time to refresh on that. The quote in front of you actually itemizes every single piece of furniture in there, from a desk piece for $1,400, bookshelves $400, but it's a complete office refresh for the entire Cody offices. The total list price of that would be $607,000, and then some. But with the contracted price through CES, it does come out to $338,869. About $52,000 of that is for shipping, receiving, installed, putting it together, and the rest of it that would be for any other extra labor tax on that. This is an ongoing project. This is where we'll be. As you can imagine, that our next layers are going to be the much more expensive will be our schools. In the next few years, probably within the next facilities master plan, we'll be having to look at furniture refreshes for Baton, Red Mountain, Columbus will be coming up as well, and RST. Each one of those projects will probably be in excess of 2 million some to do those, but those will be coming on the next facilities master plan. This is just get to our office to that point where they're no longer broken and in disrepair. The other thing that's an important note, that a lot of the office purchases now for furniture are fully warranted. So any of them, I believe this comes with either a 15-year or a lifetime warranty as well. So as long as it's not damaged, that's incurred by us moving it, breaking it, they do come in, they repair it, replace it, all at their cost. So there is that piece that's also built into it as well. So while the price is much higher than we would typically see, like in the past, like 30 years ago, those did not come with warranties the way we see them now. And so I stand for any other further questions. You know, this was a project that Superintendent Chavez had started going on, so I'm sure she's on if she wants to add, but I'll stand for any other questions that are more detailed on this project.
Johnson, do you have any questions?
I don't think so, and I appreciate that. I was just kind of curious.
Sure.
If you answered one of my questions about, you know, kind of when the last time frame this was done, but I saw that, I thought, man, my wife could probably stand 330. I was trying to fathom that, and I appreciate that.
Well, I couldn't say out loud what I saw, what I wanted to say when I saw that price too, so I appreciate the shock.
Yeah.
May I ask,
Yes.
what, where do we get the money from, under what?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking, President Roscoe, board members. The money has been budgeted. It was put together, I think, at the very beginning of this year, specifically for furniture refresh. And so this is an operational expense as well. And so we were able to kind of do that. That's been kind of an intentional plan over time to make sure that we can do that. However, as we do go forward in the future for some of the larger ones, those will probably have to be SB9 purchase as well, using capital outlay, just because of the scope and the breadth of those projects to do that. And those will be much more substantial.
Can
I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mary Lou. I was just wondering how many offices in total will be refreshed, and then is the front desk, as people come in, is that also being refreshed?
Yes, President Roscoe, board members, every single office in the Cody offices will be refreshed. So all of them will have a standard kind of furniture set in there, and the circulation, that entrance piece will be also replaced. So it is a little bit more friendly. It will meet some of the ADA standards as well. So that will be completely done. The only thing that will not be done at this time, we're still waiting quotes to see if it's a feasibility, is the dais in the our boardroom. And so in there, we haven't received a quote on that. That is still, I think, usable at this point. And it would be much more customized that they'd have to do, but every other office will be completely refreshed in there. The superintendent's office, all other offices, all along the side. So we have a kind of a standard office suite for that.
Mr. President, members of the board, I would like to add to Mr. Parker's description. We do currently have a workroom that will also be transformed into a conference meeting room. For some reason, we're always needing space. And so for that, we'll have an extra space that we can meet with members of the public or with our team.
Any other comments, Mr. Johnson? No, you're good. That's, we want those questions asked. We wanna be able to explain.
We did this, I thought it was expensive too, but once it got broken down and what we get out of it is beyond. And hopefully we can keep it for another 30 years.
Sure. What I'm most impressed with, this company has been their warranty response. And it kind of breaks, they just fix it, or they just send us a new piece, and sometimes that's worth the wait of gold.
I have a question if I may.
Yes, sir.
Well, the furniture, is any of it salvageable? Will it be distributed to other areas, campuses perhaps?
That's actually a fantastic question. So the furniture that is currently in the office will be set up and offered to the district. Anybody wants their best pieces, and whatever is not being used will be offered up at auction with a typical component. We were also going to be reaching out with our local partners, other public agencies, to see if they too want to do those. So we can just kind of give that to them, and whatever's left over, we'll put out for auction. So yeah, you get first pick.
All right. So any other questions, comments?
No, I mean, I look at the price and go, oh, but then I think about, we need to provide, furniture that helps the people that sit in those offices. And I know myself, I've been out of that office for what, 5-10 years now, and I still see the same pieces of furniture. So, and it was old when I was there.
No, anything, a motion?
I'll move to accept the quote from Beck's Little Office Interiors in the amount of $338,869.15 for central office furniture refresh.
Have a second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes,
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Thank
May I
you.
ask one more question though?
Yes.
Oh, you want to say?
No, go ahead.
Will this be done in one time, or will it be?
All in one time. So
Okay.
we're hoping to have the install done before the end of this fiscal, so by June. So as soon as this is now approved, we'll begin the ordering process and then basically look at a schedule out for delivery. People in the central office are gonna kill me now because they have to pack up all their stuff and start to get ready that at the most busy time of the year. But we're gonna make it happen. So it should be all installed before June 30th.
You can just get something that covers you if they can't recognize you.
Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna move to the Florida offices for the rest of the time.
On to consideration of resolution approving disposal of technology items through public auction. I would think that would be Mr. Glickler.
President Orozco, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, this is a request for the approval of the disposal of, I believe it is 1,287 technology items. Of those 1,287, I think 43 of them are taggable items per policy. In other words, they're over $1,000. The others are not, but they are technology items that we've had practice tagged because they're laptops we don't want to have go missing. Of these items, they are almost all fully depreciated. The oldest one is from 2002. Second one is 2005. So we've got some things that have been sitting around for a while. But this is part of the ongoing process that I've been coming before you on, finding the items in the district that are obsolete and getting rid of them as we're bringing new technology in. Of the items that were over $1,000, all but a few are fully depreciated. Two in particular stand out. They are precision laptops that we are investigating further. So although they're on the list, I have an inkling that they might not be as fully damaged as the list says they are. If they're not, we'll be pulling them back out of that list and putting them back into inventory. Otherwise, everything on this list, we're seeking approval to post it to the public surplus website. With that, I stand for any questions.
Any questions on the board? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the acceptance of quotes from Four Rivers.
No.
I can do that too if you like.
It's the consideration of resolution, it's H.
I'm sorry, consideration resolution of approving disposal of technology items through public auction.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Crowe.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez, Mrs. Paez,
Yes, yes.
Mr.
Can you
Roscoe,
hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we can.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
On to consideration of acceptance of quotes from Four Rivers for My Little School upgrades. Mrs. Sweeney.
Good afternoon, President, Orozco, members of the board. So the quotes are for, we did a new playground at Memorial Elementary for the pre-K. We did a separate playground from the K-3 to make sure that they're on appropriate equipment, and we did that upgrade last year. But right now, there is no shade on that side of the building, so the kids are baking during our hot months. And so, the quote for the 38,000 is to cover the play set that we installed last year. And then there's an $18,000 quote for the sandbox, because the sand gets so hot, the little kids can't get in there and play on it. And then there's the second quote for the sand cover for the Bell Elementary sandbox as well. Because Bell Elementary does not have, coverage by the either, so it's just trying to get them some shade on those playgrounds in our heat.
Questions by the board? Entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the quotes from Four Rivers for my middle school upgrades.
Second,
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Quinlan,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe.
On to,
Jay.
consideration of acceptance, sorry, oh yeah. Acceptance of quote from Valley Telecom Group for internet access for Columbus Elementary in the amount of $61,440 total per year over 36 months. Mr. Cooper.
President Orozco, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. Although this says this is for an internet connection, it is technically a point-to-point connection between this facility here and the rest of the district, which means it brings this building into the district. It allows the phones in this building to function. It allows the internet in this building to function. It's a large price because it's 32 miles of fiber. 8 years ago, the district partnered with Valley Telecom to do a $1 million project to build fiber into the ground that we have subsequently leased. The $1 million was paid for by the E-rate program. E-rate is a federal program that pays up to 90%, in some cases up to 100% of the entire cost of the project. And in that case, we were able to get 100% of it covered to put the fiber in. Of the money that you see here, what does it say? 61,440, that is per year, which seems kind of a lot for one building, but it is because it is 32 miles. This is over the course of 3 years. Of that total though, 90% of it will be paid for federally because we've applied for and received a commitment of funding for E-rate to pay for that. So it's a federal program. If you like it, I highly recommend all of you contact your representatives, as it is currently in jeopardy and Judge Sommer declared it unconstitutional. But for this year, we can apply for it. With that, I stand for any questions.
As far as like the when you apply for those grants, is that your department applying for those grants?
Yes, sir. We have access to the E-rate system, which is run through a separate company called USAC, USAC, and we submit those applications every year. We have many applications this year. Currently, there are 2 on the agenda for you today. I'm hoping to have many more for you at the agenda next time we speak.
I commend you for going out and grabbing those grants because, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely saves the district money.
90%.
So,
It is substantial. 90% is what is covered for our internet connection portion of it. And it's up to 90%. The reason I say up to 90% is in cases where a portion of the internet is provided for non-K-12 educational purposes, for example, pre-K, we have to cost allocate that out. So a slightly smaller percentage of it is peeled away and the rest of it we get. Or sometimes we have to apply for taxes and we have to sort of carefully calculate what those will be. So it's up to 90%. When it comes to the infrastructure of the building, we can also apply for E-rate, and that's the internal network for the building. That's up to 85%, but the state of New Mexico can sometimes kick in another 5%, so we get back to 90 again. As for the credit, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to give due credit to my predecessor, Gina Blankenship, who built the program here in Deming and trained me on everything I know about it. So if I'm doing it well, you can thank her.
awesome. Thank you. Any other questions by the board? We didn't vote on that one.
No, not yet.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept the quote from Valley Telecom Group for internet access for Columbus Elementary in the amount of $61,440 total per year over 36 months.
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe?
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you. Consideration of acceptance of quote from Lumen for internet access for all district buildings in Deming in the amount of 53,568. Mr. Glickler.
Absolutely. So again, President Orozco, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. This is similar to the previous one, but as I said, the previous one is not technically internet, it's point to point between the facilities. This is internet. This is what takes everything that comes into our Florida location and gives you the internet for the district. You can see that it is significantly less than the one building cost. That's because it is not 32 miles of fiber that we're leasing. It's a simple internet connection with Lumen. The things about this one here is, again, it's covered up to 90%. This is actually close to about 85% because we cost allocate out to the Cody Road location as non-educational. And we're looking for, like the previous one, a 36-month contract. The reason we're targeting it at that 36-month number there is for a couple of reasons. The first is we want to keep our options open a little bit. We've had a bit of a rocky road with our internet connection over the last year. And if something better comes around in 3 years, I would hope that they would bid on our application when we put in the E-rate. The second part of it is whether or not something better is coming along. The state of New Mexico is working on a state education network. And we like the flexibility to take a look at that down the road. So in this case, we're looking for a 36-month contract on this application. With that, I stand for any questions.
Question by the board. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the quote from Lumen for internet access for all district buildings in Deming in the amount of $53,568.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe.
Sir. Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you.
If I may add one additional comment on this internet connection, because I know that when I said that we've had some rocky circumstances with our internet over the past year, I think many people here feel that when the internet goes out in the district. And we've had perhaps more outages in the last year than we've had in the previous 7. So how the E-rate process works is we post a bid to the USAC site, vendors bid on it. We have one bid for internet access, and that's the one that we just considered, no other bids. What we've been trying to do is find some resilience in our network. We cannot through E-rate fund redundant internet. That is not permitted in the program, but we can separately go out to build some resilience in our network. With the help of Mr. Parker's department, we are looking at doing that sometime this spring. So that in the future, when we have outages, we are at a minimum able to keep our central facilities online and at a maximum able to keep critical testing online if we need to do so. That will be funded separately from this, however. It would not be covered by E-rate, but we think we can get it at a pretty decent price, and we're hoping to bring that to you shortly.
Thank you very much. Okay. On to L, consideration of memorandum of understanding between Deming Public Schools and Region 9 Education Cooperative for Autism Evaluations. Mr. Science.
President Orozco, Vice President Kennedy, members of the board. I stand before you with MOU from the Office of Special Education, Region 9. We've already started the first initiative, which is having 3 of our teachers in the district begin coaching through strategies for our autism students in the district. And now we want to go ahead and provide some training for some of our ancillary to provide some evaluations in autism. They would get the training starting the 27th of February, June 2nd through the 6th. They would continue the training, and the MOU is so that the money can be transferred to the Deming Public Schools. So on completion of their training, Deming Public Schools would provide the stipends to those people that finished. And so we want to continue to be the forefront of helping our students any way we can, but we want to go ahead and have our ancillary. We got 2 psychs that'll be involved, two SLPs, an OT and a PT that will be part of the training. And so I stand for any questions.
Question for the board? I think it's a good program. Now I'll entertain a motion.
I don't know. Excuse me.
Yes.
Consideration of memorandum of understanding between Denton Public Schools, excuse me, and Region 9 Education Cooperative for Autism Evaluations.
Okay, one second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Talian. Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Rusto,
Yes.
Mr. Conier.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Santos.
Mr.
Appreciate it. On to item N, consideration and possible adoption of electronic communication during instructional school day policy. Mr. Turner.
Mr. President, members of the board, I don't know if this is the third or fourth time that we've put this policy before you guys. In front of you, we do have the survey results that we said we would send out. And in your packet, we have two versions of this policy. One that allows for the use of cell phones or their personal electronic device during passing period, and one that does not. Other than that, I just stand for any questions that you may have. And of course, we do have administrators in the room that could also speak to any questions you have.
On the survey, the question 7, it says, do you think the policy will enhance or reduce student safety? And the question is, the responses are yes and no. Just a little confusing. Does it, yeah, it's conflicting because it doesn't say yes, that it will enhance or yes, that it will reduce. So
Right.
it's kind of,
So in our feedback, there was a section for like additional comments, and a couple people did point that out. By the time I had pulled this and seen it, it was the progress of how many submissions were coming in had already slowed. So yeah, number 7 is definitely confusing. But other than that, you can see the majority of these are overwhelming in support of the policies.
just a question for the principals and the crowd. I mean, is there any benefit to having it during passing periods? I see more of a conflict, and then the teacher spending the first 10 minutes of class telling the kids to put the phones away. Whereas if we go to a policy that doesn't allow it throughout the day, I think that would be more beneficial, but I'd like to hear from you all.
So Jasper Logano, principal for the high school. I mean, personally, I would say that kids not bringing it at all would be beneficial. An all or nothing, I think, approach is best in this situation. So many issues arise from cell phones throughout the day, not just during instructional time in the classroom, but during passing periods, during lunch, where kids instigate stuff, even at the high school level. I can point out even one incident today that could have been avoided if that student didn't have a phone during school hours. I look at it more of a logistics point of view. The implementation on that during passing periods, to say the least, is going to be a nightmare, but we are willing to step up and do everything we can to enforce it if it is during passing periods as well, because it is in the best interest of the students not to have their phones, period. During our PAC meetings, even parents, husband and wife, disagreed amongst themselves that they should have it during passing period, and the husband was like, no, we shouldn't. So it's always like a 50-50. I resort back to the best decision is what's in the best interest of the students, even if we're for their own safety without them knowing it. I have 2 teenagers that go to the high school. They disagree with me. They feel that they should. They feel that it's the teacher's fault for being boring, as my kids say. But I feel like they have a responsibility that they're there for their education and solely their education. So we're helping them by taking phones out of their hands during instructional time. Questions I have is how much leeway would schools have as far as procedural is concerned? Like, I know there's a school district in Chicago, one of the biggest school districts, that used some kind of device where when they walk into the building, they have to put it in that secure area. And then at the end of the day, they're unlocked by a magnet that only the classrooms have. So that's one procedural thing we can do based on your policy, but that's one question I would have is how much freedom would we have to implement that school to school basis, or is that something that you would want uniform in all the schools?
I think uniformity makes sense, and I'm speaking for myself, just because I think you're about to get the first group of kids. I think whenever intermediate started it, those kids are getting ready to come into the high school, I believe, next year, and so they've been conditioned already to know that they can't have their phones during the day. So I think maybe some of the processes will be easier for you when you get that group, that cohort of kids. But I think that one of the things that I think the board has talked about in the past is just standardization across the district. And that way it's kind of just, you start up kindergarten, by high school, you know what the processes are, you know what everything is, and you know what's expected of you. And so I think it just makes more sense to have some type of standardization across the board, and then everybody does that same exact thing. So that way there's no questions and there's no, I didn't know kind of thing. But that's my opinion.
Are there other districts that are doing this?
Or as a cell phone, yeah, it's being adopted statewide.
Yeah.
Charter school.
Did you have a question?
No, I've been appropriate.
My only concern, board and Superintendent Chavez, is the safety aspect of it. Do they call the school, a parent would call the school if there's a death in a family, a fire, or something horrible that a student would know to go about, to learn about, so there can be a contact? Is there a way to facilitate that?
Yes, it's built in the policy that language is in there.
When we went to school, we didn't have something. Right, so, and they got a hold of us.
I actually remember that.
Yeah, so they got a hold of us.
Yeah.
They call the school, they should be able to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a major disruption the way
It
it's
is.
out there.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for tackling what's probably a very unpopular decision to have to make with many.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anybody in the room that believes that they should have them during lunch? Because this survey says 70% were in favor of allowing students to have it during lunch. So.
I'll speak to that. I'm the principal at Early College High School. And, you know, I would support Red Mountain and Deming High School, and will, you know, abide by the district policy, because I think it is more of an issue, particularly at Red Mountain. And it makes a big difference, I think, for them to not have their cell phones at lunch and during passing period. However, for Early College High School, it is an enforcement nightmare, as Gasper said, and it is going to take a lot of effort from our teachers and staff to enforce that. So it's kind of a pain. But also think that I like having lunch as a time when parents can say, don't forget your dentist appointment. I left the key under that. Your dad's going to pick you up after school. Please ride a different bus. And so those messages do need to come to those kids. And so that's just one thought about having access to the cell phone lunch.
But I think that there's also kids in high school who have greater responsibilities that maybe they need to communicate if they have a job, or they might have families of their own sometimes too. So.
So,
I'm Meg, principal at RST. And we don't have passing periods, but we do have recess, and then we do have lunch. And so from an elementary standpoint, to me, it can cause more drama with our kids. They're turning it on for that 15 minutes. Oh, they've got this text, and they're coming back in, and it causes more controversy with kids. You may not think that there's prevalence in elementary, but they really are. I was walking in to observe a teacher, and this little girl's walking out, and I asked, where are you going? Oh, my mom's calling me. And so it is a disruption. It is. I mean, I would advocate in elementary that they don't have them. They can call the office. We deliver notes all day. We send calls to classrooms if there are emergencies. And so I don't see the benefit of especially elementary having it.
And I think the
And
two policies that we have before us today, they both say no phones in elementary school, period. It's only to consider whether there should be an exception for high school students 9th through 12th to have it during passing periods and or lunch.
I just am advocating in advance because I know parents try to get those little loopholes. Well, they can have it during here, but not here, and so, and I'm sure it causes you guys that same thing. They get just a glimpse of something, and then I think it'll probably increase tardies and things like that because phones are addicting. I mean, it's want more.
Yes.
Adults do. How many of us have our phones here?
Yes, sir.
I'm speaking from two perspectives. I worked at the high school and I worked at Red Mountain as we implemented the cell phone policy. I have seen the difference in change from our community at Red Mountain Middle School where the kids, I can actually know, number one, hey, when I tell you to put your cell phone away, you put your cell phone away and it doesn't come out anymore. These kids have, number one, they're communicating with each other a lot more than when I was working at the high school. They're more actively engaged with each other and they're starting to understand each other's feelings. They're not going behind each other's back, turning on that phone, getting that information right away to say, hey, look, Jesus is over here, we're gonna go beat him up. Go look at what Amanda's wearing, she's wearing nasty makeup, let's go make fun of her. From that perspective, working at the high school, when I worked there, there was no cell phone implementation. There was a lot of situations that could have been prevented, the cell phone wasn't there. There was times when I had to intervene with certain students that I worked with because of cell phone drama on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of those sources. Here now, when we're going into Red Mountain, you know, the kids understand, number one, no cell phones, they can't be out, we can't be going around, we can't be messing around with these. They're getting to that point where now they're trying to like go behind our backs into the bathrooms and everything like that to try to get this drama going. But it stopped right away because I have students come in and say, Mr. Sierra, there's so-and-so in the bathroom, they got their phone, and I've had a couple of students tell me, go into that restroom and tell me that's where the student is at. These kids are taking accountability on each other as well, because the culture is completely different in that school. I can go in there and control my classrooms that I'm in, and these kids respond well to what we're doing. They're a little more engaged than when I was working at the high school, when I had that cell phone situation, and I had to dip the first 5 minutes in class and tell them, hand over your phone, turn off your phones, please don't have those cell phones in. I mean, it's understandable. I understand where parents are coming from, where they're scared that their kids are not gonna get this, the kids aren't gonna get that. And we're living in a different time from when I was in school. And I understand their concerns, but at the same time, we're looking at de-escalating a lot of these situations. A lot of these kids now here at Red Mountain, when we implemented that policy, we don't have as many fights as we used to. I just see it from my perspective as a teacher. Always, these kids aren't sitting there running around going like this, oh, there's gonna be a fight, there's gonna be a fight.
Yeah.
Get it on camera. That's the first instinctive thing to do for them. Now they know, hey, we're gonna get in trouble, and they try to avoid getting in trouble.
Thank you.
On that end, that's what I'm just saying.
Did you have something?
Can I, from a parent's perspective, we homeschooled for a while until this year. And my daughter, as a fifth grader, was talking to other, granted fifth grader elementary, but she actually talked to kids she was in kinder and first and second with. And she thanked me for not sending her to public school because she said at recess, all the kids were on their cell phones, they weren't engaging, they weren't communicating or like making friends. So she thanked me for that. And now she is at DIF, where if I have to, if you have to change the bus, you have to call the transportation or the secretary. You can't call your kid. And anytime I've had to call to say your pickup instead of or whatever, they give them the message directly. And I feel like if there was an emergency or something, they can say, hey, send that kid to the office, and then we'll have you call your parents from there. That's what we did when I was growing up. And if you think about it, if I leave the house right now and I go, oh man, I forgot my phone. 20 years ago, I didn't have a phone and I made it through the whole day fine. And that's what I tell myself. So I think the kids would be better in all grades without it as a parent.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm gonna make a
Yes, sir.
motion that we pass, that we don't have cell phones in the public schools for the kids. If anybody wants to. Second, that's cool.
It has to be a policy that's considered without passing periods or with passing periods, but to an all-out ban, the way it was just motioned, we can't pass
However
that.
you want me to say.
Couldn't you just strike the language for the exceptions out of the existing policy and then that's the ban?
If that's the motion,
Yeah,
but that's not the motion that was
would be the
made.
motion right there.
Yes, sir.
Real quickly, I don't have any students in my building, so you all can do whatever you want. I'm agree. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I didn't have a cell phone in school either, but I also never went to an active shooter drill in school. But I did attend Lubbock this year. I went by and I took a look at some of the technology that they had there and inadvertently got to see what they do for their cell phones, pursuant to your question what other districts do. And they have this hilariously simple solution here that they put in place in every one of their classrooms. And
Hanging on the wall.
walking through the classrooms, I was there to look at technology. And what I saw instead were students just walking in because it was standardized in every school and every classroom. They walked in, they quietly put their phones in the slot, they sat down, they did class. At the end of the class, they would walk back and they take their phones out, they put it in their backpack and they go to the next class. It's a shoe thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. And it worked. I asked the principal there, how has this been successful? And they said, well, we standardized it. We made this a district directive and a district policy. We made it everywhere for the students who want to expect. So they're able to implement a really simple solution that wasn't as complicated, that allowed for the flexibility of parents feeling comfortable with their student safety and being able to reach their students if the horrible disaster occurs, but also controlling the academic environment. It doesn't quite address the problem you have if students are in the hallways goofing off, nor does it address all problems. Students are pretty cunning. They would put burner phones in. They would put a case in or something along those lines. But that was a different disciplinary thing that people then would address at that point. They would take that disciplinary challenge and they would address that one instead. I was thinking about that. I remembered I had that on my phone and you asked the question about other districts did, and I remember that I'd seen one. I thought you might be interested.
Thank you. So you'd want the policy without having the phones in the
yeah.
passing periods or at lunch?
Yes, sir.
That's what you want.
That's what I want. Of course, and then no phones in elementary and all that, which we had already discussed.
Okay. So a
I
second
make
for
a
that.
motion for that.
I have the motion. Do I have a second?
Can you repeat exactly what's the motion is so that we understand? Maybe I'm the only one that needs.
This is kind of the motion is that we don't have cell phones during lunch at the high school, and then we don't have them during passing period. And then at all, and then we don't have them also at the elementary level.
Thank you.
I have a question before we move on that. Specific to the high school, how would that work for your students who leave for lunch?
Would be able to.
Are you guys going to?
So that's what I was talking about, procedural wise, there's so many ways to implement the procedures, and that's the question we have, because the only students that can leave campus during lunch are upperclassmen who have a 3.0 and higher, and also not chronically absent. So that's something that we'll have to address if we do have that in how we're gonna incorporate that.
If you have the locking devices, your guard at the gate, so to unlock them and then.
So that's another one. So the shoe rack, so at the beginning of this year, before the new policies came into play, we ordered about 50 some lock boxes for the classrooms and then about 50 shoe racks. So the keepers were split. But then the new policy came out that said that for a teacher to hold a phone, it had to be in a secure area and the desk did not include that. So then I told teachers they're not gonna be able to put it in the shoe rack because if they put it in the shoe rack, kids will steal them from each other. And then now we're held liable because we took the phone. So that's another thing that we'll have to address procedural. There's a lot of factors that play into it. Like I was saying, the Chicago schools use yonder pouches. Obviously, we were looking at videos, high school kids in Chicago were saying, oh, we put burner phones. We have a student that'll unlock it, the magnet for us for $3 for the day. But those are things that we can address, other issues. But there does have to be something in place that might look a little bit different than what Red Mountain is doing. I like what Red Mountain is doing, and I'll seek guidance from him as far as what they're doing. But again, they have closed campus, so there's a little difference. Maybe that's an incentive for kids, upperclassmen, to leave campus and get better grades and use their phone, because once they leave campus, we're not responsible for what they have in their vehicle or whatnot, but once they come back. But I mean, are we gonna collect the phones as they walk in? I
I think the policy says they would put it in their backpack.
Yeah, backpack, it can't be visible.
It's the same thing with IDs. I mean, we
Yeah.
have that battle every day. We do sweeps for IDs. If they don't have it, they end up in lunch detention. So I can't speak for teachers and how that would look when they're monitoring students in the cafeteria, in the cyber cafe. Because we have so many different areas. We have a patio cafe, soccer field, the basketball area.
Where we have. It's not gonna be perfect, but at least we're trying to do something for so that we can educate our kids. That's how I see it. We're gonna have to, it's gonna develop or evolve as we go.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Looking into those pouches too, I think we talked about it at one of these meetings.
The only thing is with the pouches, there's people that have told me that they put burner phones in there and they still have their phones on them, so it's like.
So the thing is just a way for them, they still have to put it in their bag regardless, right? But since we only have 2 entry points at the high school, it's easy for us to monitor that. And it's just a way for them to leave it on there and not be tempted. But either way, they still have to leave it in their backpack. But it's just a temptation thing that it's locked in there. They also showed us one that's clear and it has a lock. So I don't know, I think the purpose of that is if there is an emergency or something and they can't get a hold of them, they see that it's a parent, they can go to the front office and call the parent. They just can't get into it, and it uses the same type of magnet device. But those are just not incentives, but a way to keep them out of that temptation of pulling out of their backpack. So as they're coming in, we have to see them put it in that yonder pouch, lock it, and put it in their backpack.
Okay, and it's gonna get better because there's the elementary schools not doing it, DIS is not doing it, Red Mountain's not doing it, so you guys are it's gonna get better and then just gonna get.
Yeah, it's just that 3, like you said, the freshmen coming in, they're gonna be with it. It's my seniors, my current juniors, and my current sophomores. Seniors, I mean, they're on their way out. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be for a couple of months once it passes. But after that, if we're just consistent with it, I think it'll.
I mean, I think that with at the other schools right now, we don't have any other pouches. It's just a system of you need to put it in your backpack. And I mean, maybe we can try that for the time being, and then if that doesn't work out, then move to something else.
We can look into the budget considerations once we get to that point to see what that costs. As
100%.
far as those pouches go, because I think it would help you all with monitoring it, because then you can't go into the bathroom and open the pouch and text whomever or whatever.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Parker has actually looked into those pouches, so he may have some information on costs.
For president, members of the board, we have been looking at that over the last actually year. I've worked with Mr. Glickler on this as well, with specifically the yonder pouches and variations of. It is definitely well within our budget to be able to move on those pretty quick, depending on how soon we put this policy being implemented, and then working with our secondary schools, figure out numbers and purchase timelines. But it's definitely within the budget constraints. There are also 2 bills currently being looked at the legislative session. One that look at exactly on the banning piece, but there's another one that's specifically reimbursing districts for the cost. So definitely all doable.
And maybe the consideration of the pouches, if you get caught with it, maybe you're required not to have a pouch in your backpack because you weren't allowed to keep your cell phone or leave your cell phone there in your backpack like you were told. So maybe that could be the discipline, so you can't have it go out at the end of the day, whatever to get it out.
And just to clarify, is this something we're gonna start now?
We're talking about it. It's on the table.
Yeah.
It's one thing.
No, but are we start like, at what point are we going to?
Tomorrow, if we vote on
Tomorrow?
I second Mr. Cole's motion that we adopt.
Can I
the
just-
policy.
I'll just, there's,
Can I just ask
She
a
muted
quick question?
herself. Yes,
Does that
ma'am.
include iWatches also?
Yes. I'm sorry, you had one more comment.
Say what Mr. Talked about the bill that the governor would be reimbursing for lock boxes.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if Mr. Turner had any information as far as how far the bills have been going through legislature. If they made it out of committee, if they gone to the floor, or where have they gone?
Mr. President, members of the board, Ms. Berger, the bill that reimburses is Ms. Brantley's bill, and it's gotten through committee. It has now been sent to another where it'll be heard again. But when it went through that first committee, it was passed with a due pass recommendation. So it's gaining a little bit of traction. And for the record, Ms. Brantley says her daughters are against her own bills. So
All right, you had a second. Olivia, you had a question?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. I think the one thing we need to remember is that when we did the survey, there were 70% of people who did say that they wanted the cell phone at the high school during passing periods. So, I mean, during lunch. So I just wanted to put.
Yeah, well, we have the high school principal right now telling us he doesn't want it during lunch, so.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Mr. Kroll?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes. And Blaine Gasper.
On to, on to consideration of, on to consideration of academic calendar for SY 25-26. Mrs. Reinhardt. Thank you.
President Roscoe, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, our calendar committee, there are several committee members here today. We stand before you. We told you guys we would do a survey. We also have some additional information that we would like to share. And that way you guys can hopefully vote on a calendar today so we can move forward with all of the reasons we provided at the last board meeting. So I wanted to start off with the instructional time. So I know there was a lot of questions about that 1,140 minutes that the students have to have of instruction. And so when you look at that, it comes out, we would come to school for 178 days. Several staff started asking, why are we going up to that 188 days? And I wanted to explain the rationale for that. Every day that we go over 180 days, there is additional funding. The state does allow 60 hours of PD time to go towards elementary hours and 30 hours of PD time to go through secondary hours. So last year, this is just a rough estimate, we received an extra $4 million based on going above the 180 days. So we gave you all a copy, and it's back there on there as well, a mock, what it could possibly look like for instructional hours for each school site. And then at the very last column, it tells you how many days extra that we could have in surplus, which our hope would be that we could use those surplus days for weather event days. But we are waiting for clarification from the PED. They still have not given us the template to calculate instructional hours. So we did this based on last year's calculations. But once we're hoping they would not pull funding if we did have to take one of those surplus days and use it for a snow day makeup day. But we will clarify that as we move forward. But I did want you guys to see where we stand potentially for our minutes and days for surplus. And then I'll keep going. And if you guys have questions, just ask. Everybody's here to answer questions. We also provided you guys option A and option B calendars again. We did conduct the survey and we provided you with the data from the survey review. We had 702 parents reply to the survey. We had 92 students, 180 teachers, 147 support staff, and 30 administrators conducted the survey. We also gave you data on all of the schools that were represented from the survey. And then we also had several open-ended questions. We did not print that out because it'd be thousands, but I can tell you it was a mixed bag of feedback. And if you want to see them, we have them in the back. So if somebody voted for option A, they had feedback against option B. If somebody voted for option B, they had feedback against option A. So it was kind of a mixed bag of feedback. The calendar results, I can tell you option A is had the highest votes at 576, which was 59% of the votes. Option B had 394 votes, which was 41% of the votes. So based on the survey, it looks like option A is the winner. So, and then we stand before you guys for any questions that you have.
The only question that I had was, now that we won that lawsuit, I guess over the 180 days, will we be able to take off, what is it, Easter? Is it Monday or was it Good Friday that we didn't get? We
didn't get on option, if you guys were to choose option A as the one, it would be the April 6th. We did not put that in. And if you guys wanted to add that Easter day, we would, it would be in our best interest to change that with a red day.
So if you see a red day on the calendar, that would not affect our funding. If you guys did want to add that day back in, we could add it, but it would help our funding if we left it for a red day.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd also like to add, because I think it's important to know that we were not allowed to reduce any of our minutes or hours prior based on our 22-23 calendar. And that was also another issue. That was the year we did the K-12 plus, and all of our kids came back around the second week of July. When that happened, PED required us to meet those minimum hours from that school year. And that was a rule. We did win with the lawsuit on the 180. However, they put that rule in place, and I'm very concerned they're going to still hold true to that rule, because that doesn't have anything to do with days. They're pushing on us on the hours, and the governor is not happy that the lawsuit was won by the district. So we're still a little concerned that they might come back and say, you can't just be at the 1140. For example, this year at high school, I believe it was 1242 we had to stay at. So while it was 100 hours over, or 100 minutes, 100 hours over, we could not make that adjustment because they would not fund us because we didn't meet the 22-23 school year calendar. So those are all the considerations as well that we need to be aware of.
Wow. Okay.
And the potential instructional hours that we gave you by school site, depending on when they start and when they end, things like that.
Oh.
I'm gonna make a motion for A, I guess, for day one, so.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
Mrs. Kerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That on to item O, enter closed session to discuss limited personal matters as permitted under section 10-15-1 H2 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, specifically for the board to review and discuss superintendent response to evaluation, and for board to discuss superintendent resignation effective March 31st, 2025, and possible candidates for interim superintendent role. Discussion of matters subject to attorney-client privilege pertaining to pending or threatening litigation in which the district is or may become a party, specifically threatened litigation against the district by a vendor as permitted by section 10-15-1 H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act.
You need a,
We need a motion.
I move, how would I say
Please
that?
enter closed
Pardon?
executive session to enter into closed.
I've moved that we go into executive session.
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
Mrs. Kerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll, yes.
Yes. Okay, we're back. I'll entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
Out of closed session and into open meeting?
Second that, Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
She dropped off.
Mrs. Paez,
She dropped off. Let's see if she connects again. Phone.
You can get her on the phone.
Let's see if that'll be easier.
Just make sure that you keep it by the owl down there.
I see the computer wanted to restart.
It's okay. We got you on the phone. Can you hear us okay? Okay, we're back in open,
We're voting on.
we're voting on open, going back into open session, so I'll leave it on speaker for you, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna restart again, please. So, Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowley.
So on to item Q, accept resignation of superintendent effective March 31st, 2025.
I move to accept the resignation of superintendent effective March 31st, 2025.
Have a second,
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yeah.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crow, yes.
And no further action or discussion will be done at this time. So we're on to superintendent reports.
Yes.
That would be me. Item A, discussion regarding district AI policy.
Mr. President, members of the board, for just discussion, not for a first read of any type, is before you is a draft of an AI use policy for employees. We're seeing the use of artificial intelligence programs being used across the district. And it's time to start thinking about how we regulate that with our employees. So this is just kind of before you to look over, to provide feedback, to give me guidance, our office guidance on whether or not you guys would like to see, some sort of parameters around the use of AI. With that, I don't really have anything else to add. I'll stand here for feedback and or questions.
Is the district considered implementing anything that applies to students too, or just employees for now?
Mr. Glickler, do you have information on that?
Yes, sir. I can speak to that a little bit. President Ross, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. We have some limited applications of AI that are already used in the district. The high school in particular has been asking us to make sure that it is accessible to students so that they can teach them how to use it and make sure that they're using it in a way that is both productive and ethical. So we have that in place for students. And there have been a few cases where some of the schools have tried to purchase a licensed version of various AI products and have come through our department. One of the things that we're looking for, and that Mr. Trimmer is looking for in his office as well, is a way to standardize that and make sure that we're getting something that is available for student use, that we have the standards we applied across the district. The important considerations there are, of course, are that it is safe, that it takes care of our data in a safe way, and that whatever tools we do put in place, teach it to be used productively as well as ethically at the same time, as well as explaining, frankly, what it is. Because there is a lot of mystique around the idea of AI and what that means, and demystifying it and explaining to people how to make it into more of a tool and less of a.
Well, and I think maybe one thing to consider as well is a lot of colleges have where you have to submit your papers online and they can detect AI. And so at least have something with that in there as well, because if the kids are headed that way, they need to understand that goes on, and they'll flunk you, they'll give you a 0, they may even fail you out of the class and or the university, if those in those cases. So I think that needs to be considered as well, or at least a piece to talk about with it.
Absolutely. And one of my spare time things that I get to do is I teach at Western. And so we do have tools that are built into the product there. It will analyze anything that is submitted for plagiarism, and one of those tools is to analyze AI use. I think that's something that we can also leverage via Canvas that we have for the district. And we just need to make sure that whatever leverage is integrated with that is functioning, is modern, doesn't get too many false positives, gets the right amount of detection. So you're absolutely correct. There are some tools that we can use. But it's also an opportunity to train students about what plagiarism means. I don't know if I can speak for everybody who's any kind of college instructor, but from my perspective, I have a lot of students that come to me who just don't know. It's completely an alien idea to them. And so having that kind of education in tandem with AI, as it's making it easier to do, is valuable as well.
Definitely.
Mr. President, members of the board, and one of the things that Mr. Glickler alluded to is Mr. Lozano, who unfortunately left, has been looking at a program for the high school, which then I had asked if they would ask the vendor if we could make it a district-wide thing. That way we're not operating different programs for our students. And Mr. Glickler made sure that this particular vendor, if we end up going with them, would sign basically an acknowledgement of FERPA privacy for our students.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Something maybe you look at and revisit.
Yeah. Something we're trying to get a bunch of.
Okay. Sounds good. If no other questions or comments, on to athletic coaches and hiring process.
Would be Mr. Parker.
Mr. Parker.
Mr. President, board members, just to kind of clarify, I know that there's always some confusion and some misunderstanding about our process for hiring, especially when we're looking at athletic coaches, because we are seasonal. One of the things that we want to kind of assure to the board, to the community, we want to stay ethical and transparent and consistent on our hiring process, practices for that. Really, the process happens that if a vacancy happens during the middle of a season, right? During a specific coaching vacancy that happens through the season, that as a district, we try to get somebody in as soon as we can to maintain that integrity for that program mid-season, right? We can appoint, but as soon as that season's done, we post for the position and we go through our normal traditional hiring processes. So that also means that we gather a survey. So we put a survey out to really look at the traits and skills and aptitudes that we want for that coach for that specific sport. We then, through the entire hiring process and then the application process, we use those to really develop our questions, to vet out our candidates, and then take them through the interview process. And that interview process will be sitting with a committee made up of coaches, other relevant individuals that can provide a solid feedback and participate in a meaningful fashion to the hiring of that coach. And then that, of course, that coach is then recommended by the committee to superintendent's office and HR to then offer the position contingent on a background check and all that wonderful stuff. We want to make sure that that's transparent and consistent as we go through. We've done that already through some other practices and hiring pieces. We've been modifying that so our practices go that same way with our teachers, other administrative pieces as much as we possibly can, unless, once again, we have to fill a vacancy in the middle of something. We can't really kind of control that. Sometimes people will think it's like, oh, I'm a shoe-in. Somebody told me that, yeah, I'm going to do, all I got to do is apply. So we really can't do that. But what we can do is control the integrity to the process and make sure that we're kind of responsive to that. And because of that, HR is always involved in every step of that process to help kind of mitigate any kinds of misunderstandings or confusions that anybody may have on that, to make sure that it is fair and it's transparent and it's equitable to anybody who wants to express interest in coaching for Denver Public Schools. So with that, I stand for any kinds of questions or things that you would like us to address either now or in the future as we go forward.
How many positions need to be filled?
For coaching,
We've got volleyball, we've got couple
basketball is coming,
We probably have about 12 positions.
Yeah, but head coaches,
head coaches, though.
Head coaches is always one.
So the volleyball season being over, is that posted or in process?
We'll be posting for that position. Basketball is going to be posting for that position. And you'll see a survey come out for those, whoever wants to participate in that survey, that's really going to do that. So once it gets posted, then we can start to build a committee around that. So.
What are the qualifications? Do you have to have like a teaching degree?
No, you have to have a coaching license. You want to run through that? And Bernie, specifically for volleyball?
When I look for coaches, I would like for them to be a teacher, because, you know, they're mostly involved with, that's the optimum coaching work too.
But we don't have, we have less people applying year to year. So the one thing is, yeah, they have to have a coaching license or in the process of getting a coaching license. That's the one thing. We do want them, especially at the head position, to have some experience in that realm, because they're going to be coaching at such a high level. And so we do want them to have that experience of dealing with kids and have that experience of running a successful program. Sometimes we don't get those people to apply. So at one point in time, some of these successful coaches, they had to start off at one place before as well. So sometimes we have to offer those positions to some other people that don't have that experience.
Question?
So right now we do have 2 interims. We do have volleyball interim there, and also, and that person is my administrative assistant, who's honestly leaving her job and doing everything she needs to do for my position as my administrative assistant, and working with the girls every day during summer period. So, and then our interim for basketball is driving every day from Cruces and leaving his job to come work with the kids during summer period as well.
What does that process take? What time-wise? Start to finish?
We like to leave a position open in best case scenario. We have a lot of volume of people who are applying. We would leave the position open for about 2 weeks typically. If we have not so much interest, we may leave it open for further, sometimes a month too. Sometimes we've had them open for months and nobody's applied. So we try to really just get a good application pool. And sometimes, to be perfectly honest, about people who apply who are not licensed that don't have any of those. And so we can't even move forward with those people who apply. So it really depends on that. In an ideal situation, no more than 2 weeks, we open and close, and then begin that process of putting the committee together, putting the questions based on the survey that goes out on that to really kind of vet out what are we looking for? Are we looking for someone to build program? Do we already have a fantastic program, or we just need to grow it? So it really depends on each different program. And that survey usually we leave open for a couple of weeks as well.
So the hiring process that's in place now, you've hired how many coaches with it?
I think we've hired the one that we've had. Yeah. The softball is the one where we've done that entire process.
Any tweaks? Anything that needs to be changed with it, added, omitted?
I think the process is pretty good. We did have a rubric that we kind of as a committee decided some of these items weren't necessarily, but we will tweak that. So we'll look a little bit, but I think the process is pretty solid.
Any comment from you as far as?
Yeah, as far as in my position, I think, some of the stuff that I would like to see is the best time to hire a coach is pretty much after the season. So during volleyball state, basketball state's coming up, because that's when coaches leave positions. And if we have those positions opened up by that time, then we have a better, people will want to apply for because they're open.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that we need to look forward to is as soon as those seasons are over and they go to state is open, have those positions, those major positions open. So we can get those people that are leaving their positions in other places,
Typically, I mean, the way it's marketed as far as for advertisement goes, is it kind of a package deal? Like, hey, you can be a coach and we have positions open to teach? I mean, has that been approached? Has that even been considered? I don't know. Because I know the basketball coach, right? The interim, he's a teacher and we have positions throughout the district and maybe make it a package deal. I don't know how, but I'm just kind of thinking, how do we get a most bang for our buck? We get a teacher added, plus we get, somebody taking care of that position.
We could look at, just for the.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
everything's advertised in the same that we right now because of that, because we don't always have someone that.
Could do is put in some language in there that, additional teaching license is preferred.
Yeah.
As an additional piece, and then that way we can look at it to fill that out with the.
Yeah.
As well.
So
Or even-
some districts do add that
Mhm.
with a teaching position as well. They add that in the language, and I think that's more enticing because then they know they have a teaching, if they're a teacher, because I hate to say this, a lot of people are just not going to come for anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and even take it a step further, if there's a marriage involved in there, then maybe both of them are teaching and we'll make it a package deal for everybody. Just I mean, I'm sure we have positions that we can fill across the district, so. It's just thinking outside the box just a little bit and, you
I know that we hired some teachers to the high school and they come, it's like, oh, we're about to recommend this person and they have a coaching license. And that's an extra kind of little.
Yeah.
Star on top of it. So we do look at that, but we could definitely add that language in there. For teaching license, preferred, helps move that along.
Well, and it would benefit too, because we do have major sports and you have to have a teaching license to. in major sports.
Oh, yeah, so just some stuff to think about. Some stuff to chew on. What was that, Olivia?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, any other questions, comments? No? Okay. What's from you, sir? Nothing from me. On to announcements, any requests for agenda items? If none, the next regular meeting will be held March 20th, 2025 at 5:30. The meeting will be held at the Emmett Shockley Administration Building, 400 South Cody Road, Denver, New Mexico. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Kroll.
Mrs. Conley? Mrs. Cameron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paez?
Yes.